Here at KSMO Radio, we have our special guest in this morning, Franklin Delano Roth II. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you, Stan?
Well, fine. And we're introducing you to the community of Salem and Dan County. And first off, welcome, sir, to come in, and happy Good Friday to you.
Well, thank you. Same to you. Glad to be here.
Well, all right. So obviously, you probably don't know a lot of people in Salem and Dan County. So why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background. And you're going to be running for the 8th District seat on a Democratic ticket, right?
Right.
Okay. So first off, who are you? What have you done? And tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, my name is Franklin Delano Roth II. My dad was a Depression-era baby, born in 34.
That's where the name Franklin
That's where the name comes from. Yeah, my dad was named after Franklin Roosevelt, and of course I was named after my dad. But everybody knows me as Denny.
Okay.
That's what everybody calls me. I was born and raised in southern Indiana on a grain farm. I farmed with my dad for 26 years, and when he retired, my kids weren't interested in farming, so I made the decision to get out. I moved to Jefferson County, excuse me, which is where I live now, with my wife Sandy, and worked for Monsanto for a few years, and Land O'Lakes. I was in ag sales, had different territories. I covered all of southern Illinois with Land O'Lakes.
Were you at the Monsanto plant in St. Louis?
No,
or?
I was a field rep for them.
Okay,
I was what they
good.
called a local field advisor. It
Sure.
was a new job that I took with them. I covered 6 counties in southeastern Illinois along the Wabash River. It ran down to the Ohio River.
Okay.
And then when the economy fell apart in 2009, they basically dissolved my whole group nationwide.
Wow.
1,800 people. So,
Ouch.
So yeah, that's when I went to Land O'Lakes. Winfield Solutions was the actual company that was
Okay.
part of Land O'Lakes.
Sure.
Worked for them for a couple of years, and I was working more with dealers then, which I didn't enjoy. I enjoyed working with the farmers. That was my background, obviously. Got out and ended up eventually finished out retirement driving a truck for Estes Express. They have a terminal in Fenton, and I drove out of that. They're based in Richmond, Virginia, but their terminal was there, and I retired from there a little over a year ago.
So you retired, and you've taken residence up in southeast Missouri.
Yeah. I moved to Jefferson County 19 years ago.
Okay.
Lived outside of Festus for several years, and then my wife and I bought a house 5 years ago between Hillsboro and Peevely, or Hillsboro and Festus, depending on which way you go. Been there, I said 19 years, so I consider myself a Missourian now.
There you go. Well, I used to play a lot of softball in Peevely years ago at that field they have there off Highway 61. You can't miss it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's been, they actually have 2 fields down that way, but I played a lot of softball down there in my day. So, you know, I know exactly the idea, and I used to head on down to Festus a few times, had some friends down there. You know, and that area is a little bit different when you start talking southeast Missouri and the 8th District. When we start talking about the 8th District, such diverse, different types of people, different types of land, different types of economies. When you start thinking about it, and you've gone through a lot of different things yourself in your career, boy, you have to be flexible and understand the different needs of these people and their situations, don't you?
Right. Well, as a suburb county, basically, of St. Louis, we have a lot of union representation. Unions are big in Jefferson County. You know, obviously, a lot of people. My wife worked in downtown St. Louis, has worked there for 40 years for the same law firm. She's a tech writer.
Okay.
And so, yeah, there's just a lot more opportunities there than when you get down and say this part of the world and farther down closer to Arkansas and things like that, where it's more rural. You don't have all those job opportunities, and that's, unfortunately, that's what's causing a lot of our kids to leave after they graduate school and try to go on to college and then settle somewhere where they can make more money. And one of the things I want to do is try to revive our rural industries and bring more manufacturing back into this part of the world and pay our teachers much better. I support a revenue sharing program from the federal level that will pump more money into these rural schools, because to me these kids deserve the same opportunities that kids in Ladue or Clayton, the suburbs of St. Louis or Kansas City, the wealthier school districts. These kids are just as smart. They just need the opportunity to prove it, and the opportunity to go on to school and not just college, because not everybody's meant for college, but trade schools, technical schools, whatever their interests are in. But bring industries back to this part of the world so they can stay here and raise their families here. A lot of people want to raise their families here, but the job opportunities just aren't there now.
Well, as we all know, the agricultural economy is not what it used to be. I mean,
Right.
Missouri is still, you have to call it a rural state.
Sure.
We lead, cattle producing. We're one of the top 2 states in the nation for that. And people forget we have a cotton crop that comes in third, and people don't think of Missouri as a cotton producer, but if you go to southeast Missouri and get down there just the right time of year, you can almost watch it snow. There's so much cotton. Am I right?
That's exactly right. It was funny. I remember the first time I came through southeastern Missouri was my first exposure to cotton. But I mean, this has been 40 years ago when I still lived in Indiana. But yeah, it was a whole different crop because we were all corn, soybeans, and wheat, and we actually raised tobacco where I'm from. We were right across the river from Owensboro, Kentucky. They had 3 or 4 big tobacco warehouses where you sold it in the wintertime.
Sure.
So we raised a lot of tobacco there. One of the things I did as a kid, I know farm kids, especially in this area, it's all about putting up hay, which I did that too. But we also put up tobacco. And I'd rather put up hay 2-to-1 over tobacco. It's nasty work. Tobacco produces a gum on the stalks.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, it turns your hands black. And it's just, it's very labor intensive. Very labor intensive.
And if anybody may be familiar with baseball and pine tar, that tobacco tar is very similar, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's very sticky, and I'll tell you, when you wipe your brow, that's a bad move because it will get in your eyes and it will burn for days.
I bet it will.
Yeah,
I bet it will. So you're coming out of a rural, obviously, background. You grew up on the farm. You know what farming's about. You know how hard the work is, and you know right now though we don't have the tax bases. These areas in the 8th district don't have the tax bases like you're talking about. Ladue, Clayton. These people have huge tax bases. They got beautiful schools, indoor pools, and everything else. You get out in the rural area, you're not going to have any of that. You're gonna have schools that are basically the bare minimum, state minimum with the property tax. You're going to have them with possibly some bonds. They're just trying to keep the schools alive. That's going to be a chore, and I know it. We talk about that at one time. Gosh, I can't remember, but about 20 years ago, I actually talked about sharing some of those property tax values with the major cities, with some of the rural areas. It didn't fly through the state legislature, but that would really equate things with the school system, wouldn't it?
right. Well, that's what we need. We need more of a sharing program because if you are fortunate enough to live in one of these wealthy suburbs, you have every opportunity. As a kid, you get the best teachers because that's where these people want to go teach because they make more money. We have the poorest paid teachers in the country, starting pay and regular pay, and it's a national disgrace that we allow that because we don't have to have that. We can support our teachers, bring up their pay where they can afford to stay in. Like I said, to stay in the communities they really want to live in. They want to raise their kids here. Many people do. They don't want to raise them in town, in the suburbs and all the traffic and all the headaches that go along with that. People that have grown up in rural areas, like I did, don't want to live there. We want to raise our family, but you have to weigh that against your job opportunities and all that. But we can share revenue and bring. Every school doesn't have to have an indoor swimming pool and all that. But you know what? They should all have computers. They should all have well-paid teachers that want to stay there and be part of the community. So we can do that. We just have to have the guts to do what needs to be done to do it.
I want to be just point blunt with you. I mean, you're not a spring chicken anymore.
No.
I know I'm not either. And what drove you, or what desire did you have to become a candidate to run for 8th district? There had to be maybe an underlying factor that you said, hey, I'm seeing something not being done, or was it just something personal that maybe you've had kind of churning inside you for a while, saying, I'm tired of hearing this stuff. Something needs to be done. Can you tell us how you got started?
My background, I have a degree to teach high school history. That is my college education, history and political science. So the interest has always been there. I've always been an avid reader, of course, of history, but political, books and the news. I stay on top of the news every day. And I don't like the direction that we're going, either in the state or in Washington. I think we've gotten so divisive in our politics. We've turned families against families, friends against friends. And to me, and it's a lot of it's over what I call fringe issues. I mean, as I travel around, most people that I talk to, we all want pretty much the same things. I mean, I know most people want better wages, job security. We want good health care. We don't have to fight an insurance company over every bill that's affordable. We don't want our rural hospitals going out of business like we have in this district. Like I said, we all want good education for our kids. We want our Social Security funded and guaranteed that we've paid into all our lives, and we can have all that. But we use fringe issues, I think, to divide us. And like I said, we don't have to hate each other over this stuff. I have friends that are Republican. We agree on nothing, and we laugh and have beers over it.
Well, there you go.
We just, but it is what it is. And you agree to disagree.
Exactly.
But you don't have to hate each other over this stuff. And we've gotten to the point, and media plays a big part in that. They want you divided because it's very profitable, especially on the national level in television. It's very profitable to keep people mad and upset and divided. And we've allowed that to come in between communities and families and all that. And what I'm trying to do is just bridge that gap. I have major differences, obviously, policy-wise with Jason Smith and other Republicans, because I think in the last 40 years we've allowed our money to be sent basically to the top 1% of the people in this country. That's why we've actually transferred $50 trillion worth of wealth in the last 40 years to the top 1%. And we have billionaires today worth more than some countries. And it seems like it's never enough. And then they come in and they want to start, because we can't fund a lot of the things that we have in the past, infrastructure and schools and things, and they always want to cut things that seem to help working families. Now they're talking about cutting Social Security and Medicare. I don't know anybody my age that's on Medicare or Social Security that want to give it up or see the benefits cut. And we don't have to. We don't have to do that. We can go back to a tax system that's fair. I don't want to tax rich people into the dirt. That's not good for the country either. But they should pay their fair share, just as the corporations should. They all use the infrastructure. We all share it. So we all should share in paying for it. And being in a community means a community supports community. And when you have one section of the economy, especially the people that make all the money, that don't share in that, then you end up with bridges that are failing and roads that are failing and schools that are failing and hospitals that are going out of business. And it's not good for anybody. So I want to help turn that around and get back to where we help everybody. I want to help the working people and the poor people. But it seems like the cuts always come at the expense of the working poor and working families, middle class.
You mentioned earlier about getting industries back in the area, because to fund Social Security and Medicare, obviously you got to have people working, and there's a lot of people, and I don't care what they tell me about the unemployment rate, and that only means people are looking for a job. If they're not even looking for a job, they don't get counted. If they even may have given up looking for a job, or maybe they decided that they can find another way and live off the system. Okay, so that does happen, and we know that. I'm not going to, you know that as well as I do. However, small towns, and I'm sure you can remember back years ago, Salem was one of those. We had a number of factories, had a number of industries. We know that Dexter's losing Tyson chickens. They're closing the chicken plant down there, which is, 300 jobs, if I'm not mistaken.
Almost 700.
700 jobs.
Yeah.
That's a lot of jobs in Dexter, Missouri, because, and Dexter has areas around there that feed that plant with people. That's right. But 700 jobs in an area that's rural, that's a lot of jobs.
It is.
And when you start cutting that, those wages that those people were paying, that's where you get your Social Security funding, your Medicare funding. And when they start moving that out of the area, that's where it really starts to hurt. So you were talking about bringing this back. Do you have a plan or an idea of how you can get these? Let's put it this way: get manufacturers or industries to get re-energized by putting things back in rural areas. We have the internets now, and we struggle trying to get internet here because a lot of our areas Mark Twain National Forest.
Right.
They're not going to string one through there. And I don't care what they tell you. You got to go through red tape so much to get a pole put up in the Mark Twain National Forest. So, I'm just wondering, how are we going to do it? I would love to see manufacturers throw stuff back to small towns where people are anxious to go to work.
Yeah. Well, we've basically just outsourced a large part of our manufacturing overseas
Yeah.
for profits. I mean, it's just pure and simple profits. When you look back to World War II, when we geared up to go to war, we converted factories, automobile factories, everything to make wartime production, airplanes. And I know that there in Evansville, Indiana, close to where I grew up, they had a Republic Aviation plant at the end of the airport. It was a Whirlpool plant for many years after that, but they produced airplanes. My grandfather was actually a welder in a shipyard to build LSTs
Wow.
in Evansville, Indiana. But we couldn't do that today because we don't have our steel manufacturing is overseas, most of it. Some of it's still here, but most of it's going overseas. We don't really have much of a textile industry anymore. But everything, I mean, from our computers, our chips, we saw what happened during the pandemic with
yeah.
They couldn't even build cars because the chips weren't manufactured here. And with the Chips and Science Act that they passed a couple years ago, they're starting to build new chip factories in this country, so we don't have that problem again. But you take something like the pandemic, just could basically cripple our entire economy because we've outsourced all of this manufacturing overseas.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and it's nonsense, and it's all due to profits. I mean, it's all for money, and it's the same problem in our healthcare system. It's all based on profits. It's not based on the best care. It's based on how much money can be made by the insurance companies.
And bad trade agreements that were made back in the 70s.
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember Ross Perot. Remember
yeah,
when he said about the big sucking sound?
Yeah,
if you're gonna sign this trade agreement, you're gonna watch all the profits go, which is exactly what happened.
Exactly what happened.
And he was a businessman. He was not a politician.
Right.
And when he made that, and I remember listening to him, he had the big sucking sound. And my dad said, he goes, he's absolutely right.
Yeah.
But the ordinary everyday person who listens to politicians, they're speaking political jargon.
Yeah.
He's speaking business jargon, saying, guys, if you're going to open up the borders to free trade, we're the nation that people want to be.
Yeah.
They're going to produce it at a less price than we can, and everybody's going to start shipping it out, and that's exactly what happened. Yeah. But like I said, we had textile shoe companies here, textile companies here. Mm-hmm. We had all kinds of different companies here, and I know you grew up in small towns. All had usually like one industry that used to feed the major ones up in the big city. Yeah. And that was a big success of Salem for years and years and years. When that changed, and like you said, I think it was like a little bit after the war, you started seeing some of those factories. Okay, well, we don't have to use those small towns anymore. Mm-hmm. But the labor was fairly cheap. Mm-hmm. It was dependable. It was close. And people's families knew they had a job. Yeah. Exactly what you were talking about when we spoke earlier. Yeah. Can we get back to that?
I would hope so. But there's going to have to be some changes made in our whole, our whole mindset in the last several years has turned to nothing but absolute profits, whatever the cost. I mean, Boeing is an absolutely perfect example. The CEO just stepped down, and another corporate officer, but all the problems they've had because they were profit-driven. Safety became secondary. So they shoved things through, they built planes faster and all that, and look what's happened to them. But when you have the mindset that profits come above everything else, you end up with what we've got today. I said that you end up with what we've got in healthcare. I'm for universal healthcare. I want everybody to have healthcare. We're the only country in the world that doesn't have it, major country. And it's strictly because money keeps universal healthcare out. We have Medicare for older people, but you still have to rely on 20% of your coverage with insurance companies. Why? Why? I mean, anybody that's going through the Medicare maze of options that you have, it's ridiculous.
And it changes every year.
It changes every year. I mean, people can't keep up with it. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be that way. And, there's a wall of money and a wall of propaganda put up against it. Oh, you can't have that. You don't want that because you can't see your doctor. You'll wait forever to get into a doctor. Well, my wife just made an appointment with an endocrinologist last week or whatever, October, before she could get in to see him. And that's what we have. And everybody's in a plan. You have certain doctors you can see.
Oh, that's right.
You're in a network.
Yeah, the networks.
You're in a network. So I don't understand their argument They said, well, and we can take, are all these countries' systems perfect? No. And I've talked to many people from many countries, and I always make a point to ask them about their health care. I've traveled quite a bit, and no one would trade systems with us. They cannot believe we bankrupt people and basically kill them. We kill people because they can't afford their medications. I mean, people try to ration insulin, which is absolute nonsense in the richest country in the world, that we put people through this. There's over 600,000 bankruptcies a year in this country, and 2/3 of them are medical bills. 100 million people in this country carry some form of medical debt. Well, that's money that's not being used, to basically help the economy.
Right.
But we can have universal health care and cover everybody, and it's not going to break the bank. We can do it. We just have to get through that wall of money that the drug companies and the insurance companies put up. We can have it.
And you're mentioning Medicare and Social Security, and I remember I lost my dad a few years back, but I was keeping track after my mom passed away. I was doing his books, and he'd get his Medicare check in, and it was always electronically sent, which he didn't like because he liked that check coming in.
Yeah.
But that's all right. He got used to that. But the month that he passed away was the first month that they took anything out of his Social Security, and he was on it from 62 until 94. But he worked like a dog from the time he was in 6th grade up until he retired. So he got everything that he earned back. As far as I was concerned, probably wasn't even enough. But I noticed that the last check I got from Social Security that we had to send back had a deduction for Medicare. That was the first time I ever saw it. So I contacted him. I said, because he was still alive at the beginning of that month. And I said, why is there a deduction here? I've not received any notification from Social Security. Oh, yeah, well, it's been announced on some network like 8 months ago. It was going to start happening. That is not a public notice.
No.
That is not a direct notice to my father. He doesn't understand this, and he wouldn't. And then, unfortunately, he passed about 8 days later. But I saw that, and I questioned it. Well, now, as you well know, if you're on Medicare, you have to pay deductible for Medicare. You have to make contributions to Medicare. You have to have a drug plan for Medicare, and you have to have your Part B, and you have to have your supplemental for Medicare. It used to be Medicare is going to be paid for you. That's not the case anymore. You're paying still $1,000 or more to get Medicare. And I'm not talking about in a month, obviously, but I'm still talking about $2,000 to $3,000 a year, probably, depending upon what plan. And we go back to that plan you're on. But that's for people who are in Social Security. Now you're on limited income. That $3,000 hurts.
Yeah, you better believe it. Just like the supplement for 20%. Now, why can't we go ahead and cover the 20%? We don't need the insurance companies in that. My supplement is $194 a month on top of what we pay for Medicare. And we don't need the insurance companies there. And they don't cover vision, and they don't cover dental.
Nothing.
How is that not part of your health care?
Yeah.
It should be part of it. And it is in these other countries. My wife and I went to Aruba last December, an island nation of 100,000 people, and they have universal health care. 100,000 people on that island. They pay a 7% tax, but everything's covered.
Paid for it. Yeah.
Everything. We went on a tour of the island in an ATV group, and the guy that led the group, just again, I always ask. They probably look at me like I have two heads. But, I asked him. I said, what kind of health care do you guys have here? We pay a tax, and so I just played devil's advocate. And I said, well, don't you get tired of paying that tax? He said, no. He said, because we don't pay anything when we get health care. And it just so happened his wife had a heart condition, and they couldn't treat it on the island, and they sent them to Colombia to a better hospital, paid everything. His transportation, while he stayed there for the operation, their transportation back, paid all of it, and a 7% tax. And if an island nation of 100,000 people that basically rely on tourism for their money, if they can pull it off, why can't we? We just have to get through that, like I said, that wall of money and propaganda that gets put up against us.
So in the 8th District, and you'll have a voice, obviously, to help try and change this Medicare and Social Security, but one of the other things that really got me about Medicare, and I thought, okay, this is supposedly a very good program, and it does help. Don't get me wrong. It will help. But I noticed when I first had to get on it, and they told me about the drug plan. You're familiar with this. If you
Part
don't sign up for the drug plan, you will pay a penalty of $1 per month. You're not on it up until now. This is $1 per month. So if you don't want to get on it for 3 years, it's $36 extra per month that you'll have to pay if you do get on it 3 years down the road. Where was the justification where that came in?
There's none. That's what I say. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this complicated. You pay in a tax. You're going. I mean, it has to be paid for, obviously. But my thinking is you can do it something like we do a Social Security tax. If you're working somewhere, your employer pays half of it. You pay half of it. The employer writes it off. If you're self-employed, you're a farmer, which I was for many, many years. Paid all my Social Security tax, but I got to write half of it off at the end of the year. You can do the same thing with health insurance, but cover everybody and get away from all. Everything would fall under your health care, your drugs, your vision, your dental, your hospital stays. All this stuff would come under one plan. When you walk in somewhere, you hand them a card, they swipe it, you're good to go.
So we're penalizing our people who've already put into this program. Is that what I hear you're saying right now? Let's get rid of those penalties and let's just cover everything.
Let's just cover it. And like I said, we can do it. These other countries do it. And if you want a small deductible or something, we could look at. I'm not an economist. I haven't crunched numbers for 300 million people, but I know these other countries do it. And then they talk about Canada. Well, I have a woman in my district in Cape Girardeau that I've spoken to that lived in Canada for a good while. She developed breast cancer while she was there. It was all treated. They even paid for her reconstructive surgery, cosmetic surgery because of that. And since she has moved back here to Cape Girardeau, she said the nightmares that I've had to deal with on continuing health care to keep monitoring and other treatments that she's had has been an absolute nightmare. And you hear this propaganda about Canada's terrible. Well, you talk to Canadians, they don't look at it that way. They like what they have. Is it perfect? No. But we're in the United States, right? We take what works, look at what doesn't, and improve on it. Make it better.
Yeah.
Make it better. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And it can be done. We just have to, like I said, get through that wall of money and propaganda that the people that are making all the money off health care, get through that wall of money and propaganda they put out, and we can have it.
We're talking to Denny Roth, and that's not his true name, but it's a nice nickname. I like that nickname. And he is a Democrat running for the 8th District seat against Jason Smith in the upcoming election and primary that's going to be held first, obviously. Do you have a platform? I hate to use the term platform, but I sometimes think people say, well, this is my platform.
Yeah.
You're going to be talking with a diverse amount of people.
Right.
I think the 8th District, if I'm not mistaken, square miles wise, is the largest district in
Second.
Is the second largest?
The one that goes all across northern Missouri,
okay, all right,
bigger.
I thought it was skinnier up in the northern part, but maybe not. Okay. Anyway, but nonetheless, it's second largest, but it's still pretty doggone big. Yeah. They don't have any hills in North Missouri, by the way. So if you had to go up and down the hills, you can count those for extra miles.
Yeah, I say if as a crow flies, it's shorter up north.
Yeah, but let them drive from, let's just say Sykeston over there to Mountain Grove and see how much they like that one. But you're going to be talking to a number of different people in a number of different diverse economies. That's going to influence a lot of what you're going to be taking, as I will call your platform, because you're going to learn it really on the go, aren't you?
Right. Yeah, and we all are basically the same. I mean, people in rural Missouri, I lived in poverty as a child. My dad started farming when he got out of, I didn't have grandparents farm. He started farming when he got out of the Army. He drove a truck, finished concrete. Did everything, saved enough money, bought some machinery, rented some ground, started farming. Well, he lost it all because he ruptured an intestine, almost died. He was 28 or 29 years old. I was 5 or 6, and lost everything. Had to auction because his health insurance didn't pay off. And once he healed up, he ended up going to work for an Alcoa plant, the local Alcoa plant that had opened just not too many years before that. Good union job, made good money, good benefits, good insurance, pension plan, the whole 9 yards. My mom continued to work as she did, when Dad couldn't. And they saved enough money, bought 100 acres, and we were back in farming again. And that's how we started. I was 11 years old when he bought the farm. And so I know what it's like to not have anything. And even growing up, I mean, with Dad, by the time I was in high school, we were farming 600 acres of cropland. He worked a job, my mom worked a job, I played sports. So we put a lot of hours in when we weren't busy doing something else. I mean, it was nothing to sit on a tractor till 1 o'clock in the morning when we're busy working ground. So I know what that's like. And so I can relate to people in this district that have had to work like that. I mean, people work 60, 70 hours a week, truck drivers. You know, when I retired from Estes, I was running a run from here, from Fenton, to the other side of Indianapolis every day and back. 630 miles every day. That was my run. Oof. That was my run. Well, it takes a lot of hours to run, especially going through Indianapolis.
Yes, it does.
When it was all under construction.
Yeah, it's still under construction.
Yeah. So I know what it's like to put in a lot of hours and work hard. I raised a son on my own as a single parent when I was farming. Having to deal with schoolwork and sports and getting, you know, to all the things you do as a parent. Make sure there's meals, make sure they're fed, make sure you get clothes washed and things like that. So I've lived a life that a lot of people in this district have lived. And
so you can relate to them on a one-on-one basis.
I can relate to people. I mean, I've lived the same life that people face every day in this district, wondering, you know, if you're going to have enough money to pay the bills this month and you know, getting kids to school on time and take them to a doctor if you got work to do. I mean, it's endless, but it's life experience. And I have that, and I think I have that connection with people. And so, you know, you talk about a platform. Well, you have to have a set of goals. I guess. Yes. And I do, like I said, on health insurance and Social Security. Okay. We can fund Social Security from now on. All we have to do is remove the cap.
Right.
Where they cap the amount of people. So why should people that make over $168,000 get a tax break? Those are the people that need it the least, but yet they get a tax break. We need to go back to a progressive tax system where we, you know, like I said, I don't want to tax wealthy people into the dirt, but even back when we had a tax rate of 70%, you know, and a lot of people misunderstand. You don't tax people from their first dollar to whatever they make 70%.
No.
They reach that 70% when they get up into the millions of dollars.
Right.
They get taxed at the same rate you do till they reach a certain level, and then it increases after that.
The thing about those people, they have enough money to pay people who are smart enough to find deductions and get them much lower.
Well, what they do is they have enough money that they buy politicians.
And that too. But I mean, even if they have a good account, and
sure. And they create loopholes and all that because, and what I want to get back to is a system where they pay taxes, but if you don't want to pay the taxes, you invest it back into your business.
There you go.
Into machinery or whatever. That's what we used to do. And we don't do that now. So instead of reinvesting in their companies, they're buying stocks back or they're paying out bigger dividends or whatever. Again, it's to increase the wealth of a handful of people instead of reinvesting into the business again. When I farmed, I mean, to keep from paying taxes, if I had a decent year, I went out and traded machinery, upgraded my machinery. Well, that was good for the local economy. You know, the guy I bought the machinery from made more money. Right. John Deere International made more money. So, I mean, all that money works in the economy. But and we can get back to that, but we just have to.
You know, Denny, I remember years ago, when you talked about investing back in your company, people used to invest back in their people to make their company stronger. And they don't do a lot of that anymore because with a lot of things with technology obviously have changed and people become a little bit more expendable. But those people is what made your company. So when we look at today, and I don't want to get on a soapbox or anything, but look at customer service. Look at the personal service you get with bigger corporations or smaller corporations. It doesn't make any difference anymore. They funnel it off to somebody else, or they put it on an automated robo system. Yeah. Where's that person you're calling? If you need a part for your John Deere tractor, and you call and say, "Hey, I need a part for my John Deere tractor," and you're talking to a salesperson, or you're talking to a parts department, and you got a person they understand, they know the product. Bang, you get the right part. Try to do that with an automated robo system when they have, you're trying to give them a part number, and if you have one number wrong, they don't know it, and they just ship it apart.
Yeah, well, it's just, it goes in line with everything else in the business model we have today. It's all about profit. It's not about customer care, just like in our medical system. It's not about patient care, it's about profit. You take the profit out, but companies have just been allowed to, and the laws we've passed, and it goes back to allowing these companies to locate overseas. They talk about the global economy. Well, when you have Apple or Nike or Oakley sunglasses that take their companies and build their factories in China to ship the products back here because they can get the products made for slave labor,
Right.
ship them back here, well, it's more profit. That's not global economy.
No.
Global economy is if you're competing against a company in another country that's based in that country. If you're competing against Mercedes-Benz, if you're Chevrolet or Cadillac or BMW or Saab or whoever, that is a global economy. Picking up your factories here and moving them to a third world country like Vietnam, Bangladesh, or China because you can get slave labor is not part of the global economy. And that's one of the things that I would work to change. Bring those factories back. I don't want a blanket tariff on everything because, as we saw here a few years ago, we put a tariff on it and it just killed the farming community.
Right.
And we're still feeling that today because China has gone to other countries like Brazil and Argentina to get more corn, soybeans, things like that we should be sending them. So it's not easy to just say, well, we're just going to put a tariff on everything. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
It sounds easy, but
easy.
You've done your homework and you understand. We're going to wrap things up here in about 3 minutes. So I want to give you an opportunity to kind of maybe summarize what you really want the people here in Dane County to do. And I know you're going to be back here a few times, so we look forward to seeing you and stopping in and saying hi and getting a chance to maybe have town hall meetings or maybe just a coffee with you or whatever.
Sure.
But in about 3 minutes or so, can you kind of just give me your gut feeling, what you feel, what you want to do, and let's just throw it out there.
As I said, I want to get the government back to working for the working people. I mean, that's basically my message. For far too long, the last 40-some years, we have funneled a big part of our net worth to the top 1% of the people in this country. And that's why we have trouble fixing infrastructure. That's why we have, the problems that we have, the schools and things like that, because we don't have the money to fund it anymore, because it's all sitting up here at the top. We are the people that make the economy go. We're the people that build the new homes. The rich, they can only buy so many yachts and many Caribbean islands. Okay, we buy the products that fuel our economy. We're the ones that go out and eat at the restaurants. We're the ones that buy the cars, the boats, the campers, the new houses. I mean, we are the people that make the economy roll. And for too many years now, the economy hasn't worked for us. It hasn't worked for us. It needs to get back to working. We're the ones paying these taxes in. That should come back to us. It should benefit the working class and the people. And we can expand Social Security and increase the benefits. There's a lot of people surviving on nothing but Social Security. We need higher wages. I support a higher minimum wage. It lifts all boats when you raise wages. When the UAW signed their contract here last fall, the other foreign manufacturers, Honda, Toyota, all these companies immediately raised their wages. My son's father-in-law works at a Toyota plant in Princeton, Indiana, just north of Evansville. $4 an hour raise. It wasn't a week after they'd signed the contracts. They got that $4 an hour raise. Hyundai in Alabama raised theirs 25%. So, and these people are all going to make more money. That's going to funnel into their economy. And, you'll hear people say, well, you want burger flippers to make $15, $20 an hour. Well, they have to survive, So they say, well, that's a kid's job. Well, who's going to give you your Big Mac at noon when kids are all in school? That's not reality. These people work these jobs, and a lot of them are trying to survive on these jobs. A Big Mac's not going to cost you $20 if you raise the minimum wage a little bit. It doesn't work that way. You can go to countries, in Europe and things where they have higher minimum wages and everything, and their food in many cases is cheaper than ours. So it doesn't have to be that way, but that's the propaganda that gets sent to people. But we need higher wages in this country, and like I said, we need to get back to a system where we're taxing people and benefiting the lower and middle income classes.
And I agree with you in a lot of that. but I wish that we had more of the jobs that would give these people the wages that they can. I mean, like you're saying though,
Exactly.
we've sent all these jobs overseas or across the border or wherever, but we really need to draw some of those back in. So some of these people who may have expertise in some of these areas, like textiles and things, that they can put that expertise to work.
Right.
Right
And
now
we can
it's
have that
nothing
here,
yet,
but
sure.
what I would do is these companies, the American companies, like I said, the Apple and these companies go overseas. I would penalize them.
Bring them back in.
I'm not talking about a blanket tariff on all products coming in the United States. I would target American companies that are using slave labor in these other countries to benefit themselves here.
I agree with you. Well, sir, it's been a pleasure sitting down and talking with you, and I hope you get a chance to come back and do it again.
I would love to do that.
You know, and maybe after you've had a chance to visit all the different counties.
Well, I've been in all of them but two so far. They're next on my list.
Okay, well, very good. Well, anyway, we really appreciate you coming in. Franklin Delano Denny Roth II, and he's running for the 8th District seat, and we really do appreciate it. He's on the Democratic ticket, and we really thank you for coming in, for introducing yourself, number one. But number two, letting people hear what you got to say. And I think people, if they just sit down with you and talk just like we are, they're going to find out a lot about you and what you feel and what's needed in our country, and I really do appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me, and like I say, we all agree on a lot more things than we disagree on.
Well, I'm in this. We're in the media, and I will honestly tell you, it upsets me a lot when I see what the media does to try and stir the parties up and get people go against each other, and it's a bunch of rhetoric that's a lot of time is not even true.
No,
you know,
it's profitable.
What's profitable, but what it does though is it incenses me, because what they're trying to do is just stir people up out there to where they do hate each other because, well, you don't believe in what I believe, you're wrong. You know, it's not like we can discuss this. It's just you're wrong. And that should not be happening.
And it's gotten to the point in Congress and even in Jefferson City, as you see, that people in their own parties can't even get along because it's, you know, you have a small group, it's my way or the highway. We have fringes in both parties, but the rest of us are somewhere in between that, in the middle. And we're the ones that have to change it.
Yeah, we do. And like I said, though, sometimes it makes me cringe because I'm in the media and I hear when I hear it. And I wish they wouldn't do that, you know, but it is what it is. Denny, good to see you. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it, and we wish you the very best.
Well, thank you, and thanks to all your listeners for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Keep it right here at KSMO Radio. We have